Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You're listening to the sweet sounds of Nerdery and Murdery.
You're an idiot. Welcome to episode 74 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 74. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week's episode of the hijinks and the low jinks and the shenanigans and the highs, the lows. And Zig, why don't you take over on the Nerdery side of the house?
Awesome. I'm going to be doing 3 albums by They Might Be Giants.
Awesome.
They Might Be Giants. I'm going to cover their first 3 albums. It's kind of a fascinating career these guys had. The albums we'll be covering today are They Might Be Giants, Lincoln, and Flood.
Okay.
Flood is the one that everybody knows. It's the one with Istanbul and, oh my God, Birdhouse in Your Soul. That's the one everybody knows.
I certainly know those two.
They're an American alternative rock band formed in 1982 by John Flansburgh and John Linnell. Now, during their early years, Flansburgh and Linnell frequently performed as a duo, often accompanied by a drum machine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In the early 90s, they expanded to include a backing band. The duo's current backing band consists of Marty Millar, Dan Miller, and Danny Weinkauf. The reason I didn't give listings of what everybody plays is because everybody plays a bunch of different stuff. But yeah,
Gotcha.
Those first 3 albums, it was just the 2 of them and a drum machine.
Wow.
Yeah. The group has been noted for their unique, experimental, and absurdist style of alternative music typically using surreal, humorous lyrics and unconventional instruments in their songs. Over their career, they have found success on the modern rock and college radio charts. They have also found success in children's music and in theme music for several television programs and films. The duo have been credited as vital in the creation of the prolific DIY music scene in Brooklyn in the mid-1980s. So I want to say that just before grunge hit the indie music scene and kind of broke it open, these were the indie music scene darlings. It was them and the 10,000 Maniacs.
Really?
Yep. Them, the 10,000 Maniacs, REM, the Replacements, and stuff like that. The indie music scene was all over the place. And then when grunge hit, everything was grunge all the time, 24/7 for a couple of years. And it took us a little while to get our indie music scene back. They've released 23 studio albums.
Jeez.
Flood has been certified platinum, and their children's album music, Here Comes the ABCs, Here Come the 1, 2, 3s, and Here Comes Science, have all been certified gold. The band's won 2 Grammy Awards, and they were nominated for a Tony Award for Best Original Score written for the theater for SpongeBob SquarePants, the Broadway musical. At their first concert, They Might Be Giants performed under the name El Grupo de Rock and Roll, Spanish for the rock and roll band, because the show was for a Sandinista rally. Majority of the audience members spoke Spanish. Soon discarding this name, the band assumed the name of the 1971 film They Might Be Giants, starring George C. Scott and Joanne Woodard, which is in turn taken from Don Quixote passage about how Quixote mistook windmills for eagle giants. According to Dave Wilson in the book Rock Formations, the name of the They Might Be Giants has been used and subsequently discarded by a friend of the band who had a ventriloquism act. The name was then adopted by the band, who have been searching for a suitable name. A common misconception is that the name of the band is a reference to themselves and an allusion to future success. In an interview, John Flansburgh said the words "They Might Be Giants" are just a very outward-looking, forward thing, which they liked. He clarified in the documentary movie Gigantic, A Tale of Two Johns, which is out there. You should check it out. It's pretty interesting. By explaining the name refers to the outside world of possibilities they saw as a fledgling band. In an earlier radio interview, John Linnell described the phrase as something very paranoid sounding. Yeah, they're both pretty funny guys.
I would think so with their music. I mean, their music is very funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's tongue in cheek, slapstick.
Yes,
but I mean, you listen to it and you forget how good these guys are. I mean, really, they're great guitar players. They're great accordion players. They're John Linnell's an incredible saxophone player. They're actually fairly decent drummers, but they usually, in the early days, they used the drum machine because they didn't want one of them trying to sing while he's behind the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, they could program the drum tracks, and that gave them one more person to play. And they would record their backing tracks on an audio cassette and play it. So they record the drum tracks on an audio cassette and play it instead of using the actual drum machine, and then just play along with the audio cassette, which is very, very difficult to do when you're doing something live. Think about all the moving parts you have to do in that, as opposed to having a live drummer who can just, kind of keep up with you as they need to. But they wanted to use atypical instrumentation. It was like, hey, nobody uses accordions and saxophones in rock and roll anymore, at least not in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It was all guitar, bass, drums. That's it. You get a keyboard every once in a while, but they were like, anybody could come up here and use a keyboard. We want to do a rock show with an accordion, a saxophone, and a couple of guitars, and a drum machine. Their songs feature unusual subject matter and clever wordplay. They had a strong local following. Their performances also featured absurdly comical stage props, such as oversized fezzes and large cardboard cutout heads of newspaper editor William Allen White.
Weird.
Yeah, well, if you've ever seen their video, don't let's start.
Mm-hmm.
All of those props that they use in their shows are in there. They Might Be Giants were the house band at Dorinka, a Lower East Side performance club run by Gary Ray. 1 weekend a month, they played on the stage there, and at the end of their 3-year stint, sold out every performance.
Wow.
Now, on March 30th, 1985, They Might Be Giants released their 7-inch flexi disc dubbed Wiggle Diskette at Dorinka. The disc included demos on the songs Everything Right Is Wrong and You'll Miss It. It was at this point that they started Dial a Song.
Mm-hmm.
Dial a Song was a telephone number that they had for several years, where you would dial in and you would hear things that they were working on. Like there's some songs that they didn't release for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years that were on the Dial Song recordings. So what it was is they had an answering machine and they would record us. You would call the number and you would get whatever they were working on that week on the Dial Song. So Linnell broke his wrist while he was riding his bicycle, and Flansburgh's apartment was burgled, stopping them from performing for a time. So they did this Dial a Song thing. The Village Voice is the one that used the Dial a Song. They were just like, hey, call this number. You can hear what we're working on. But the Village Voice is like, it's a Dial a Song. So that's what they started calling it. They released a demo cassette, which earned them a review in People magazine. I had that People magazine for a long time. I think my mom had it, and she was like, hey, you like weird music. This is in here. And I looked it up. I was like, oh, these guys are great. But it was several years before they actually released anything nationally. But the review caught the attention of Bar None Records, who signed them to a recording deal. Through the 80s until 1998, Dial a Song consisted of the answering machine with a tape of the band playing various songs. The machine played one track at a time, ranging from demos and uncompleted work to mock advertisements the band had created. It was often difficult to access due to the popularity of the service and dubious quality of the machines used. In reference to this, one of Dial a Song's many slogans over the years was the tongue-in-cheek, always busy, often broken. Mm-hmm. The number, and I'm going to give it out because it's still around, 718-387-6962 is a local Brooklyn number. And so if you called it back in the day, you got long distance charging. But the band would advertise it with the line, free when you call from work. So in this little Bar None Records thing, you know what? I should probably give a little bit of background on the band first. So these two guys were both from Lincoln, Massachusetts. They were friends in high school, but they both went to different colleges. They ended up moving into the same building in Brooklyn, and saw each other in the hallway when they were both moving in, because they were moving boxes and stuff upstairs. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here, because they hadn't seen each other in like 3-4 years. So they decided to form a band. That was in 1981. And shortly after they did the rock and roll band in Spanish. Mm-hmm. So from 81 to 85, from basically meeting each other in the hallway up until 1986, they had done the Dial a Song thing and everything else. So in that 5-year period, they went from meeting up in a hallway to releasing their first album. So I always thought that was kind of cool. Much like the Smiths, they started, and then before you knew it, they were selling stuff all over the place. Their first album was They Might Be Giants. It's often referred to as the Pink Album because it is, it's a picture of the weirdest. It's drawn. It's a picture of the weirdest parade you've ever seen. Like there's a giant dog and a fishbowl on wheels, but the background in the sky behind it is pink, so they call it the Pink Album. It's the debut studio album. and it was released by Bar None in 1986. The album generated 2 singles, Don't Let's Start and She Was a Hotel Detective. It is included on Then the Early Years compilation of the band's early material. It is entirely, without the exception of Don't Let's Start, which is replaced with a single mix for the compilation. So they included that entire album on that early years record. And it catalogs the success, contributed positively to the sale of the album. Key tracks again are Don't Let Start, but also Put Your Hand Inside the Puppet Head. Everything Right is Wrong Again. Number 3. Yeah, they call the third song of the album Number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Don't Let's Start, Hideaway Folk Family, 32 Footsteps, Toddler Highway, Rabid Child, Nothing's Gonna Change My Clothes. And on the other side, because again, it was a record, so you had 2 sides. On the other side, it was She Was a Hotel Detective, She's an Angel, Youth Culture Killed My Dog, Boat of Car, Absolute Bill's Mood, Chess Piece Face, I Hope That I Get Old Before I Die, Alienations for the Rich, The Day, and Rhythm Section 1 Ed.
And I'm not very familiar with any of these.
How about Don't Let's Start?
No.
Don't Let's Start?
Uh-uh.
We get done with this recording, you should hear Don't Let's Start. I think you'll like it. If you like They Might Be Giants, it's really good. Their next album was called Lincoln, named after the town from Massachusetts, which they're both from.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln is the second studio album. It was released again by Bar None in 1988, so 2 years later. The album is named after John Linnell and John Flashberg's boyhood home of Lincoln, Massachusetts. The album produced 3 singles, And an Egg, They'll Need a Crane, and Purple Toupee. It's included on the Then the Early Years compilation of the band's early materials in its entirety. Lincoln maintains the range of music styles present on the previous album, and lyrically attempts to merge wordplay into narrative song. Lyrical themes and broaden with the inclusion of songs detailing troubled romantic relationships. And an Egg, They'll Need a Crane, and I've Got a Match. The songs that verge on social political satire, Purple Toupee, Kiss Me, Son of God, or Kiss Me and Son of God. Whereas musically, the album explores a number of genres. For example, songs such as Cowtown and Mr. Me incorporate elements of sea shanties. You know, sea shanties were really big a few years ago. They were doing it in 88. While Lie Still, Little Blonde suggests jazz influences. But like previously released, Lincoln does not utilize a full band or arrangements. Again, it's the 2 of them playing all the instruments and a drum machine.
Mm-hmm.
The drum tracks on the album were produced by an Alesis HR-16 drum machine. The album features the Ordinaries, which was also signed with the Bar None label, providing the string arrangements for Kiss Me and Son of God. So the tracks are And an Egg. And an Egg is basically a love song to a person who lives on the other side of the world. And an Egg lives in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. They
don't know this person. They're just imagining this person. So it's someone who on the exact opposite side of the world of where they were when they wrote the song. And it's And an Egg was, I think, the first They Might Be Giant song I ever heard. But it's Anna Neg, A-N-A space N-G. So like someone from Vietnam would be named. Track 2 is Cowtown. Track 3 is Lie Still, Little Bottle. Track 4 is Purple Toupee. Track 5 is Cage and Aquarium. Track 6 is Where Your Eyes Don't Go. Track 7 is Piece of Dirt. Track 8 is Mr. Me, and track 9 is Pencil Rain. On side 2, track 10 is The World's Address. Track 11 is I've Got a Match. Track 12 is Santa's Beard. Track 13 is You'll Miss Me. Track 14 is They'll Need a Crane. Track 15 is Shoehorn with Teeth. Track 16 is Stand on Your Own Head. Track 17 is Snowball in Hell. And track 18 is Kiss Me, Son of God.
Again, not familiar with any of these.
Oh, They'll Need a Crane was an indie hit. So was And an Egg. And an Egg was big. They'll Need a Crane was huge.
Well, I think we know I wasn't into the indie scene, so.
Yeah, They'll Need a Crane. I had it on a compilation cassette that my friend Kelly made me that was just the bomb. I love the Lita Crane. Lad looks at other guys. Last thinks Jim Beam is handsome. It's very jazzy though. But yeah, those are that's what got them really, really huge in the indie scene was Lincoln. The first one made a splash. Lincoln made a huge splash. So once they made that for bar none, Elektra Records came calling. So then they made Flood. Flood is a major label. This is not an indie record.
Mm-hmm.
It sold, millions and millions of copies all over the world. Still selling today. When people think of They Might Be Giants, this is generally what they think of. It is the third studio album by They Might Be Giants. It was released in January of 1990. And if you've ever heard the album, the opening track says what year it was released. It says it's a brand new album for 1990 for They Might Be Giants Flood. It's a little 30-second bit, and it's Flood was the duo's first album on the major label Elektra Records. It generated 3 singles: Birdhouse, In Your Soul, Istanbul, Not Constantinople, and Twisting.
And I know these.
Yeah. Slowly twisting in the wind. The album is generally considered to be the band's definitive release. It is their best-selling and most recognizable album. Despite minimal stylistic and instrumental differences from the previous releases, Flood is distinguished by contributions from seasoned producers Clive Langer and Alan Winstanley. John Linnell and John Flashberg also took advantage of new equipment and recording techniques, including unconventional home recording samples, which were programmed through a Casio FZ1 synthesizer. Big old Casio. But, they made quite a bit of money on their first they made some money on their first album. They made quite a bit of money on Lincoln. Mm-hmm. Enough where they didn't have to have day jobs anymore because they had day jobs up until they released Lincoln. Promotion for the Flood included television appearances, promotional videos, and an international tour. The album's mainstream promotion and success contributed to its status as the band's most well-known album. Many fans, including young viewers of Tiny Toons Adventures, were first exposed to They Might Be Giants music through Flood. So what they did was the people from Tiny Toons liked the album so much, they produced some videos with the Tiny Toon characters in them.
Mm-hmm.
That did Particle Man, which then became a hit on the indie charts. Because Particle Man wasn't going to be released as a single until the Tiny Toons thing.
I love Particle Man.
Particle Man is one of my favorite songs by them, yeah. Birdhouse in Your Soul and Istanbul. The album was initially issued on CD, LP, and cassette upon its release. Flood was met with praise from critics and achieved moderate success on sales charts. And then they did the Tiny Toons thing, and it blew up. In 2013, the album was reissued as part of a CD series spanning They Might Be Giants 4 Elektra releases. And in 2014, it was reissued on LP in Europe, on Music on Vinyl in the United States by Asbestos Records for Record Store Day and Black Friday. And it was reissued again on LP in 2015 on the band's label Idlewild Records. The tracks are the theme from Flood, which is 28 seconds, Birdhouse in Your Soul, Lucky Ball and Chain, Istanbul, Not Constantinople, which is actually a cover, Dead, Your Racist Friend, Particle Man, Twisting, We Want Rock, Someone Keeps Moving My Chair, Hearing Aid, Minimum Wage, Letterbox, Whistling in the Dark, Hotcha, Women and Men, Sapphire Bullets of Pure Love, They Might Be Giants, and Road Movie to Berlin. Okay, so this played on regular radio.
Right.
Birdhouse in Your Soul played on regular radio. Most of these songs ended up playing on indie radio all over the country. And I want to talk about some of these specifically. Of course, the theme for Flood is awesome. Birdhouse in Your Soul is basically a nightlight singing a love song to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's brilliant and smart and funny. Lucky Ball and Chain is like a country tune. Love it. I don't think there's a bad song on this album. Now, some of them are only like 30, so like Minimum Wage. How long is Minimum Wage? I've got it down here. Minimum Wage is only 47 seconds. That sounds about right. Minimum Wage.
None of their songs are overly long.
No. I don't think there's a song over 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Birdhouse in Your Soul clocks in at 3:20. That's pretty long for them. Yeah, everything else is 2 to 3 minutes. Particle Man is incredible. You and Your Racist Friend was one of my favorite songs back in the late 80s, early 90s. Well, I guess early 90s because they released it in January of 1990. Twisting is good. We Want Rock is good. Yeah, there's not a bad song on this album. Kids, I put links on the website. Go to the links. Play these albums. You know what? When I do these record things, I think I probably ought to put the links to all of these songs on our YouTube page, just so everybody can go find them. Just type in Nerdery Murdery. When you hear this, all this stuff will be on your YouTube page. You need to at least give Flood a chance. I don't think it's that different from They Might Be Giants or Lincoln. It's a little more polished. That's the only difference. The sound quality is a little bit better on it. But other than that, it's the same guys doing the same thing, just the two of them and using programmable drum tracks and all sorts of crazy instruments. Due to the acclaim in which it was received, the album is considered to have cemented the band's reputation as a staple of alternative and college rock. Yeah. Curtis Silver quoted in a retrospective for Wired magazine, collected anecdotes from They Might Be Giants fans, many of whom were first exposed to the band through Flood. Silver concluded that new fans are drawn just as much to the band's old material as they are from their more recent work due to its sustaining accessibility. In fact, many fans cite the band's earliest albums as their favorite, though often not Flood, despite or perhaps due to its long-standing mainstream success. I don't think, even though it was a major label, I don't think it's, again, other than being a little more polished, I don't think it sounds any different from the other two. I mean, and it's clear, when I say polished, I mean just the recording of it.
Right.
It's a little clear. The first album on a couple of tracks is a little tinny. Lincoln is tinny on like one track, maybe two, but there's no tinny sound in Flood. You don't have to turn Flood up to listen to it at an acceptable volume. But yeah, these guys were indie darlings. And their next album, Apollo 17 was
18?
Yeah, it's Apollo 18. That's right.
Yeah, Apollo 18.
Yeah, Apollo 18 was also really, really good. And some of their kids' albums, like we got some of their kids' albums for Kelsey and K3 when they were little, and they loved them. We used to play them in the car all the time. Here Come the ABCs and Here Come the 1, 2, 3s. Although I don't think we ever got Here Comes Science. Maybe we got to play that. Lorelai likes them too. So they also did the opening for Malcolm in the Middle.
Mm-hmm.
You're Not the Boss of Me.
Mm-hmm.
And the opening for The Daily Show is a Bob Mould song, Dog on Fire. But the recording The Daily Show uses is by They Might Be Giants.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically about it for these three albums, other than Get Out and Listen. What do you think about some of these songs?
I like They Might Be Giants. I didn't get a chance to listen to the first two albums, as I probably should have. That was my homework, and I missed it.
It happens. Hey, at least I gave you the list this time.
Yeah, that's true. But I've always liked They Might Be Giants, and especially the ones that I really know, Particle Man and Constantinople, Not Istanbul, Birdhouse in Your Soul. Those are favorite songs of mine. I love those songs.
All right, cool. Well, hey, man, you should get out there and check out They'll Need a Crane. Again, it's less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
They'll Need a Crane's a good one. Lad looks at other girls. Last thinks Jim Beam is handsome. It's one of my favorite lines of all time. And it's they'll need a crane to tell their love apart. But yeah, that's basically it for TMBG, or They Might Be Giants, other than get out and listen to them. Some of their other stuff's good too. And again, with these bands, I'm doing, a few albums at a time. I will probably go back and talk about some of their other albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like once we get up to about 100, I want to go back and talk about some of the other albums by the Replacements. Stuff like that.
Cool.
But yeah, let's get that stuff out there.
Cool. Look forward to that. Well, thank you for that. Always like to hear about different bands. Hopefully everybody else is enjoying it as well.
Thank you, sir.
So with that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
Today, I got my information off Oxygen, Wikipedia, and the Tampa Bay Times. And with the recent big lottery, I wanted to cover Karen had actually requested this, and so I'm covering the murder of someone who won the lottery.
Karen, our patron?
Yes.
What's going on, Donna Karen?
Yes, so this is the story of Abraham Shakespeare. Nice name.
His name is Abraham Shakespeare. Is this a real name?
This is a real name, Abraham Shakespeare. Huh. So Abraham Shakespeare's rag to riches stories begins in his hometown of Plant City, a rural community known for its vast strawberry fields and orange groves. He didn't have much growing up in the town and worked in the fields to support his family as well as other odd jobs. But on November 15th, 2006, Abraham and a friend, Michael Ford, stopped at a local convenience store. On that day, Shakespeare was 41 years old. He had $5 in his wallet, and he was making $8 an hour. He had no car, no driver's license, and no credit card. He had spent time in home for juvenile delinquents, and he could read and write, but not really much. He had a long criminal record. Mostly he loitered. He drove where he wasn't allowed to drive. He stole. He hit people, and later he didn't pay for children he fathered, and he went to prison twice. After he got out in 1995, he lived with his mother, where he worked as a garbage man. He unloaded trucks, he washed dishes, and he did day labor. And that's what he was doing on that day on November 2006. He was assigned to ride shotgun with Michael Ford on an overnight food route to Miami, and they made a delivery in Lakeland, and then they made a delivery in Winter Haven, then they stopped at the Town Star Mini Mart and Frostproof. Abraham handed Ford a few dollars and asked him to buy 2 lottery tickets, and that night he won $31 million.
Wow.
Abraham agreed to a payout of $16.9 million and shared generously by purchasing homes for his cousins and his family. He helped his friend Greg Smith, who was a local barber, pay for a business loan worth $87,000, and Smith agreed to pay Abraham in installments to pay off those debts. Abraham bought himself a home in Lakeland, which was a home he dreamed of, and it was a small mansion. But Abraham, who was an uneducated man who struggled to just read and write, seemed to be in over his head. Less than 2 years after striking it rich, Abraham was down to his last $2 million. Well, his last $2 million.
Yeah, no kidding.
Friends stated that Shakespeare had grown frustrated with the apparent constant appeals for money from both hangers-on and strangers, and he told his brother, quote, "I'd have been better off broke. I thought all these people were my friends, but then I realized all they want is money." But Lady Luck entered his life when a mutual friend introduced him to Doris Dee Moore, and she offered to write a book and tell Abraham's story. But as the pair fleshed out the details, she quickly realized he was falling into financial ruin. Abraham allowed Dee Dee to step in and fill the role of his financial advisor. She suggested he not leave the house to avoid people who were wanting a piece of his wealth, and he isolated himself in his large home. When loved ones couldn't get in touch with Abraham after a few weeks, Dee Dee Moore, the only person in close contact with him, assured him that Abraham just needed to get away. She also maintained that Abraham was sending her text messages insisting he was fine, but Abraham's family didn't think this was entirely plausible. He did mention wanting to leave town, and people wanted to help him because everybody's dream he was trying to fill, he never seemed to have time for himself. But after 7 months of no contact, Abraham was reported missing to police. Abraham's mother told authorities she'd received text messages from her son, which rang as peculiar to her since he could hardly read or write. This was more than a missing persons case. This was a missing persons case involving a 30 million plus lottery winner. Investigators looked at the long list of people who owed him money, and the suspects were plenty, but there was no evidence and no leads for authorities to determine foul play in Abraham's disappearance. They looked to Dee Dee Moore, who was the last person in touch with Abraham, and Moore readily shared texts from Abraham indicating he left on his own volition. She said that Shakespeare decided to leave town and gone to Texas, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, or Orlando, Florida, or maybe he was sick in a hospital. And she also said that Shakespeare was tired of asking for money, so she helped him leave town. Investigators thought they hit pay dirt when they discovered Michael Ford, the man who took Abraham's money to purchase lottery tickets, had sued Abraham. Ford asserted that the winnings belonged to him and that Abraham stole them from him. But in a court, a judge ruled that Abraham was the rightful owner of the tickets, but was Ford's courtroom defeat maybe motive for Abraham's disappearance? Ford denied any involvement, and authorities determined Ford was in Georgia at the time of Abraham's disappearance, so he was quickly cleared. Around Christmas time in 2009, Abraham's mother received a phone call from a private number. And on the line was a man claiming to be Abraham, but mother's intuition told her that the caller wasn't her son. She reported to detectives who traced the call, and the call actually came from Greg Smith, who was the barber who accepted the $87,000 loan from Abraham. Investigators tracked the phone to a busy shopping mall parking lot, and while waiting to find Smith amongst hundreds of cars, they were surprised to see another face pull in, Dee Dee Moore. They followed Moore. She pulled her car alongside Smith's, and Moore got into Smith's car and handed him a wad of cash. And then authorities tailed Smith and pulled him over. Smith cooperated with authorities, claiming Moore paid him to make the phone call to Abraham's mother. And he said, "Listen, I made that phone call. A lady paid me $5,000 to call and say I was Abraham Shakespeare." When we told Greg that something was going on with Abraham, he did seem genuinely surprised. Authorities released Smith, but then we're left to wonder, why would Moore stage a phony call? Red flags caught investigators' attention when they dug into her background and found out that Moore's history contained accusations of fraud, theft, and arson, and she was also arrested for insurance fraud after lying about a couple of men who allegedly attempt to rape her and steal her car. Police decided to bring Greg Smith back in, requesting that he wear a wire and meet with Moore again. And he said, quote, "I said, serious, man, I ain't trying to chase that woman, but when authorities told me he's a missing man, I believed that. So I said, I'll tell you what do you need me to do to help you out?" Smith placed the wire in an empty energy drink can and drove to a gas station to meet with Moore. And Moore told Smith she was being blamed for Abraham's disappearance, but would pay for someone to take the rap for it. It was enough for investigators to obtain a subpoena for her phone records. Upon examination, they found that after Abraham disappeared, the only calls and texts from Abraham's phone were actually made from Moore's. Compared with Abraham's phone records, Moore's cell phone pinged from the same towers as Abraham's. Moore offered the mother of one of Shakespeare's two sons a $20,000 home if she would lie to detectives and tell them that she had seen him recently, and she also paid $5,000 to a relative of Shakespeare's to give his mother a birthday card and imply it was from him. Under the guidance of detectives, Smith called Moore and said he had a solution to her problem, and Smith brought a man with him he claimed was his cousin to another meeting with Moore. However, this cousin was an undercover cop. In that conversation, she finally admits she believes Abraham is dead and that somebody shot him. The undercover cop said he'd go to prison for Abraham's disappearance if Moore paid him $50,000 and provided the location of the body, claiming he needed a story to sound credible to detectives. Moore claimed that Abraham was shot and she knew where he was, and later that evening, Moore requested to meet with Smith alone at the gas station. From there, she drove Smith from Lakeland to Plant City, where she purchased a house, and she led him to a large cement slab in her backyard and said, "Tell your boy to dig 6 feet down and you'll find Abraham's body." She also handed Smith the murder weapon, maintaining that she got the gun from an unknown person and shot and killed Abraham. On January 25th, 2010, authorities found the remains of Abraham Shakespeare exactly where Moore said they were. Authorities found Dee Dee Moore at Abraham's Lakeland mansion, which she claimed she had purchased from him. They brought her in for questioning. And in a videotaped interrogation on February 2nd, 2010, Moore denied killing Abraham and stated that drug dealers killed him. Unless she confessed, detectives had no proof she pulled the trigger, and so they looked further into her history, and investigators visited her ex-husband. He said that on the night of Abraham's murder, Moore had used a machine to dig a hole in her backyard and fill it in after sundown. The ex-husband claimed he had no idea that there was a body at the bottom. Authorities determined the man, who had never met Abraham before, was not involved in the murder, however. Circling back to Moore, she claimed she was the victim of men who stormed into Abraham's home and killed him, and she allegedly was forced to cover up the crime. She said, quote, "A guy come in and shot him, took everything we had in the safe and left with it. They put a gun in my mouth and I peed my pants. I was so scared." She provided a name to detectives, but it turned out to be a dead end, and as her story came apart, prosecutors charged her with murder. Through the investigation, Moore, it was also learned she had once staged a scene to fraudulently keep a vehicle which was in danger of being repossessed after failing behind on payments. She had someone store the car in a garage and pretend she was kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and carjacked. Investigators claimed she taped her own wrist and threw herself from someone else's car, and she even took a rape exam. She later pleaded no contest to the charge and received probation. At the trial, it was revealed that Moore spent Abraham's money on lavish gifts, including a $70,000 Corvette for her boyfriend, a $30,000 truck for herself, Rolex watches, and diamond rings. And by the time Abraham's body was found, he only had $10,000 left to his name.
Wow, she cleaned him out.
She did clean him out. In 2012, a jury found Dee Dee Moore guilty of first-degree murder, and a judge sentenced her to life without possibility of parole. And Dee Dee remains incarcerated to this day at the Lowe's Correctional Facility in Ocala, Florida. And that is the story of the lottery winner who was murdered.
Man, that's sorry. This poor guy.
Yeah, because the more I read about him, after he won the lottery, he was really trying to help people. And granted, he wasn't good with his finances. He was just giving money and giving money and giving money.
Yeah.
But yeah, this lady came along and just took him for everything and then killed him for it.
Honestly, I think the poor guy the barber who started the business, I think it may have been the only guy who shot straight with him, hey.
Well, and I had read that even after winning the lottery, Abraham did still do some of his odd jobs that he did, and one of those was he came in every day and swept hair in the barbershop.
Oh, nice. Well, you got to do something,
right?
You got to do. You can't just not do anything,
right? So it's a sad tale, but it's a tale it's a cautionary tale. If you ever win the lottery, don't just trust everyone.
Nope.
Definitely take care of your money. And it's just sad that 16.9 million that he won, and he ended up with less than $10,000 to his name.
Yeah.
Sad. So that'll take us to the end of another recording week. We appreciate each and every one of you that join us. Hope you're enjoying the information you're hearing. As always, you can find our information on nerderyandmurdery.com. There you can get the links to the information we've talked about in our episode, plus pictures. You can also find our contact information there, where if you wish to let us know things you want to hear, like this episode, or Karen wanted to hear about a lottery winner that went wrong, we'll definitely cover the things you want to hear. Let us know the things you don't want to hear, things you like, things you don't like. You can find the link to our merchandise, where if you wish to show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom, you can certainly find information there as well. And you can find the link to our patrons. So if you want episodes early, plus exclusive episodes that are available only to our patrons, you can find the link to our patron on nerderyandmurdery.com.
Please and thank you.
And Zig, we have a website, YouTube website as well.
Yes, we do. We have a YouTube site named Nerdery and Murdery, where you can go and see videos, things we like, things we think are funny, as well as supporting videos and things from our episodes. Like these albums will be on there, as well as some of the videos. It will be labeled. Yeah, the playlist will be labeled Ep 74.
Outstanding. Thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
And last but not least, please do remember to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really does help us and helps others find our content that may be looking for us. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.